Hey guys, Spud here, and today we're going to be going over how to make the F-4E Phantom II deadly in a BVR scenario. We'll accomplish this through using the Boresight mode of the APQ-120 in the nose of our Phantom, and show you guys how to use Boresight mode in a long-range scenario. Most DCS World Phantom pilots access Boresight mode using the cage button on their HOTAS, and this limits you to a 5 nautical mile range and tunes your radar to track a highly maneuvering target. In today's tutorial, we'll be going all over how to actually use Boresight mode to the best effect in a BVR scenario, so that way you can always take that critical first shot. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay guys, before we move on to a practical demonstration of how we would use Boresight mode in combat, let's first take a look at how to use this mode of our APQ-120 Radar in our F4 against a non-maneuvering drone target, so that way we can get the basics down. Now for those of you guys who already fly the F4 or are looking into getting the F4 soon, I'm sure you guys are already very familiar with using the cage button on your HOTAS to bring the radar to Boresight mode. Pressing this button will bring our radar to the acquisition mode, and we can see that it is range gated out to 5 nautical miles. However, this radar mode is tuned to within visual range for a maneuvering target. And I'm sure you guys are also very familiar with using the nose wheel steering button once you have Boresight mode selected to bring the radar to auto acquisition mode, which is essentially a vertical scan that we can then steer left and right via the weapon select button. However, to enter into long-range Boresight mode, we have to first start off in auto search mode. So we'll bring the radar back to search mode by rotating the weapon selector 365 degrees to cycle it through the bottom position. Then, once we're back in auto search mode, we can enter into long-range Boresight mode through two methods, either by binding a keybind directly to Jester in the back seat or through the Jester wheel. For a better graphical representation today for you guys, let's use the Jester wheel. We'll go to Radar, Boresight, and enter BST. At this point, we can see that the radar has also entered into acquisition mode, but our range is further out to 25 nautical miles instead of limited to the 5 nautical miles of the dogfight version of Boresight. This will allow you to better fine-tune exactly where your radar is pointing and potentially break through all that ground clutter that shows up in auto search mode that really frustrates people when it comes to using the F-4E in BVR modes. So let's take a look at the F-10 map and our MiG-25 drone that's out here flying at us. And we can see he's almost within 25 nautical miles. So let's pause the simulation here and talk about the different aspect options that are available to us in Boresight mode. The top option here, wide, is for all different aspects, whether your target is hot on you, or he is beaming you, or he is flying away from you cold. The nose option here is if you have a very high delta Mach, and this will tune the range gate of your AIM-7 Sparrow to be as long range as possible because the Sparrow thinks that the target is coming at you. And this is of course correct because the missile will have a much shorter distance of flight out to the target. Forward aspect is for again another positive delta Mach situation, but maybe you are in a tail chase situation against your target, but you are still closing on it. Aft is going to be for a negative delta Mach, so this aircraft that you're shooting at is flying away from you and is starting to outpace you. Tail aspect here, which I don't recommend using, and I don't recommend taking an AIM-7 shot at somebody who's got a super high negative delta Mach who's really outpacing you and is just running away, such as this MiG-25 that's out in front of us here, who could just turn tail and run away at Mach 2 from us, and we'd never catch him, and certainly never be able to fire an AIM-7 at him. So what I recommend is always to use these top 3 options and make sure that you have a positive delta Mach on your target. So for today, since we have this MiG-25 coming hot at us and coming real fast, we'll choose the nose aspect. We can also cycle through these different aspect options by pressing the Jester context button short, and Jester will make a call out from the back seat to hear him walking through those different aspect modes. We can now see that Jester is now tracking that MiG-25 on our radar scope and is ready to acquire the target. This works really, really well if you're working in close conjunction with an AIC in an AWACS aircraft or a GCI in a ground station who's directing you directly on top of your target, so that way you can get your nose pointed at them directly as early as possible. So we'll command him to lock the target. And boom, there we are right there. I'm sure you guys are pretty surprised here to see that we have a full STT lock with our APQ-120 radar against a fighter-sized target, albeit of course that a MiG-25 is a large fighter, all the way out at roughly 25 to 24 nautical miles. Now I do recommend always engaging in BVR combat in the F4 with an AIM-7F version of the Sparrow. At least in my testing and playing with the F4, both in PvP and PvE, it seems that the AIM-7F likes to work with the systems of the F4E as well as possible. The E2, of course, is what you'll be limited to if you are in a 1960s scenario, and the M just doesn't seem to work quite as well with the radar of the F4E in my experience. Your mileage may vary though. So let's unpause here.
Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, shoot!
Alright, and we're waiting for our max of our AIM-7. We've got a very high delta Mach between us and this MiG-25. We've got our shoot cue, and we are ready to engage. In order to be as accurate as possible, we're going to put our Pipper directly on top of the MiG-25 as I see him visually, and we'll pull the trigger. Oh, of course, we have to make sure our master arm is on. That helps. And we'll pull the trigger. And as he starts to evade, we'll start to dip on down to follow him on down. And splash. Looks like we got him. Perfect. So that right there, guys, is how we can be most effective in a BVR engagement with the F-4E. So let's move over to actually demonstrating how we would use this practically in a combat scenario, because the F-4E, of course, can be very tricky for those of you guys who are used to flying modern jets in DCS. Alright guys, we're flying a Sledgehammer at the height of the 1982 Lebanon War. We're currently fragged to hit an SA-2 guideline battery in the Bekaa Valley. But as the Syrian IADS is degraded, the Syrian Arab Air Force is scrambling hundreds of MiGs. And all of the bases and Nashirs are otherwise occupied, downing MiGs all across Syria and Lebanon. As a result, there may be a couple leakers that make it through to the various strike packages made up of Sledgehammers and Ahites. So we may have to defend ourselves in a BVR scenario against a very capable BVR aircraft such as the Flogger or Foxbat. Alright guys, let's get started with our practical demonstration of using the Boresight mode of our radar in a BVR scenario. Our cockpit is currently configured for the strike on the SA-2 guideline battery in the Bekaa Valley off our nose here. And unfortunately for us today, there are no bases or Nashirs on station to tackle any MiGs that might pop over the mountains from Damascus off to our right hand side here. if there's any interception attempts made on us today, we'll have to coordinate closely with the AIC in the E-2 Hawkeye that's orbiting off the coast of Beirut off to our left-hand side here. So that way we can most expeditiously and efficiently use the Boresight mode of our radar to lock a bandit and take a shot in the BVR regime. So let's go ahead and continue on out to the Bekaa Valley here and see if the Syrians come out to play.
Heads up, nails. 12
And
o'clock.
there they are, looks like they are popping over the mountains. So let's get in a picture call with our AWACS, so that way we can get that coordination ball rolling. Alright, so based off of that bullseye reference, they're getting pretty close to us. So let's go ahead and turn and flow cold away from the Bekaa Valley so we can build up some separation and engage these MiGs without having to worry about trespassing into the WES of the SA-2 we were originally fragged to hit today. Alright, we'll build up some separation and we'll use this time to reconfigure our cockpit for our air-to-air engagement, making sure our LCOS is in air-to-air mode. We're going to go ahead and jettison the Mark 82s off of our centerline station. And we'll reconfigure our delivery mode and weapon selectors for air-to-air and reset our radar and jester in the process. Alright, so we should be all set and ready to go. We'll make sure that we have our AIM-7s selected. And we'll start to turn back hot into the MiGs. We'll ask for a bogey dope from our AIC. Alright, so it looks like they're coming downhill on us pretty darn fast. They're at 17,000. And we'll roll out here at about 050 and start to come back to the right to get our nose onto the bandits. And we'll have Jester bring our radar over to Boresight mode. And since the MiGs are hot on us, we'll have him select an aspect of nose, and we'll recheck our switches and make sure we are set and ready to go for the engagement. We'll ask our AWACS for another bogey dope, and we'll start to visually search for those MiGs, so that way we can get our LCOS right on it and concentrate our radar energy directly on top of the bad guys here. Okay, they're getting close. And they're right at our co-altitude. Searching for these guys visually. There they are. We'll get our nose on them. But we got a pretty strong radar return. We'll command a lock from Jester.
Lock. 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4 potato, shoot.
And we'll take the shot. Missiles tracking. Perfect. We'll start to come downstairs with him as he goes defensive. And it looks like splash. Perfect. Splash 1 MiG over the Bekaa Valley. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we turn back to the south, cold, away from the WES of that SA-2.
Going down.
And that concludes our practical demonstration of how you would use Boresight mode in combat. You want to make sure that you're working in close coordination with your AIC, whether they're human or AI, and then of course start to scan the sky visually, get your LCOS right on top of the bandit, look for a strong radar return on your DSCG scope, command Jester or your Wizzo in the back seat to lock the bandit, and then of course take the shot once the interlocks on your aim 7s are out. And that is how we turn the F-4 Phantom into a deadly BVR platform. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you guys out in defending yourselves when you're flying the F-4. So if you liked the video, please leave a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Fly safe out there and enjoy this beautiful game.